The movie opens up by a man who tried to run away from someone while carrying a suitcase in his hand, but when he was on the highway, a group of armed men shot his car, resulting in a fatal accident that catch fire and flipped his car. When he finally regained consciousness, he was lying on a hospital bed, but he no longer remembered anything, including his own name. The doctor said that his name was John Kane. John had post-traumatic amnesia as a result of the accident. The woman next to him was Anna. She told him that she was his wife. The next scene showed the police chief named Ethan. He was on his way to a house that had been burned down. Ethan angrily ordered his men to find John. So far, it's not clear yet what was the relationship between Ethan and John. Back at the hospital, Anna was trying to restore John's memory by saying some important things about his past, such as his birthday, to the city where he came from. Not long after, a man named Eddie entered the room. Just like the others, John didn't recognize him. Eddie then explained that he and John were close friends, just like brothers. After that, Eddie got out of there and went to the doctor's room with his subordinate. He forced the doctor to immediately recover his memory because he wanted to get the suitcase that John took away before he got into the accident. It was clear that Eddie was not a good person. The doctor, Garza, was under pressure. Eddie threatened to kill Garza's family if he didn't do what Eddie ordered. It wasn't clear yet what happened between John and Eddie, and what was in the suitcase. The doctor entered John's room with two suspicious male nurses. The doctor then injected something into John. John had a bad feeling that the doctor would do something bad to him. He then chose to attack both the nurses and the doctor. John took the gun from Anna's bag. After changing his clothes, John forced Anna to come with him. Even though his memory wasn't recovered completely yet, he was sure that Anna was not his wife. Not long after, a man entered the elevator where John and Anna were. Turned out, the man was Eddie's out of the hospital. John it's not quite full of coolies, but he knew for sure that Anna was not his wife. Then a man entered the elevator with Anna and John. It turned out that he was Eddie's man, who immediately reported John's whereabouts to his boss. Realizing what happened, John swiftly beat up the man. When he got out of the elevator, he was again blocked by Eddie's man. He was forced to enter the elevator again, but unfortunately, the elevator they were in stopped working because Eddie had turned off the electricity. Not giving up, John took a cell phone from Eddie's man before. He then climbed to the top of the building using the elevator cable. When Eddie reached the elevator, John and Anna had already reached the top of the building. Eddie then called John via his man's cell phone. He said that he only wanted the suitcase that John was holding right now. He asked where the suitcase was, but John didn't answer and immediately hung up the call. Eddie checked the security cameras to monitor John. At the same time, Eddie ordered all his men to check every floor and room in the building. It turned out that John was in the electrical room. He tied Anna there and forced her to tell everything. Anna said that she didn't know much. What she knew was that John and Eddie were close friends who worked together to run a drug cartel. One time, John mysteriously vanished, and when he returned, it was at the hospital. John still couldn't believe that he was a drug dealer. Anna forced him to say where the suitcase was, but John insisted that he didn't know about the suitcase that Eddie was looking for. Anna also said that she was someone special to John. John vaguely remembered a woman figure that appeared in John's memory. He felt that the woman was very important in his life, but John wasn't sure that the woman was Anna, because he still couldn't clearly remember the woman's face. After that, John sneakily managed to steal the weapons from one of Eddie's men, and the shootout was inevitable. John managed to eliminate some of Eddie's men and then went back into the room where he was treated before. In his wallet, John found a piece of paper showing a menu of a cafe with an account number and someone's phone number inscribed on it. Suddenly, Eddie's man came in and immediately injected anesthetic into him. Under the influence of the drug, John tried to fight back. Shortly after successfully paralyzing the man, some of Eddie's men came and tried to catch him. Luckily, John managed to beat them all. Outside, John faced one of Eddie's men named Roy. But again, he escaped. John hid in the kitchen. Roy cornered John, but again, John managed to turn things around. A fierce fight broke out, but in the end, John managed to kill Roy. Shortly after, the doctor, Garza, appeared and explained everything to John. Before the accident occurred, John had secretly stolen a suitcase from the hands of a general named Montejo, a corrupt military that protects all drug cartels, including Eddie's. They forced the doctor to inject certain chemical drugs to hasten John's memory recovery so that John would remember where he kept the secret suitcase. Luckily, John realized it before he got injected. John then asked the doctor to inject him to dispel the anesthetic effect. Eddie got extremely irritated with John, who already killed most of his men. He ordered his men to lock all access to the hospital building and turn down the electricity. On the other hand, John tried to get out of the building, but unfortunately, he was locked. He then dialed the phone number he found in his wallet. It turned out to be the police chief's phone number, and the burned house that he investigated turned out to be John's house. From Ethan's confession, it turned out that John was a member of the anti-narcotics police force. Hearing this clearly made John even more confused. Considering what Anna said earlier that he was a drug dealer, John told Ethan that he didn't remember anything after the accident he got. Unfortunately, the phone signal suddenly went down and John's whereabouts could not be tracked, because he was using a satellite phone. John, who was trapped in a room, found cocaine scattered all over the room. He went down the hallway that led to a secret room which was used as a place for making cocaine. After that, John met Anna and asked about what actually happened. The answer was still the same. John and Eddie were drug dealers who worked for General Montejo. That day, they were both supposed to take the suitcase to the general, but somehow, John took the suitcase away. Suddenly, two of Eddie's men appeared while pointing the gun at them. John and Anna fight to defend themselves. While backups from Eddie came to catch him, John eliminated them all by blowing up a gas tank. Unfortunately, John was injured by the explosion. Anna then went out to look for medicine to treat John's wound. Not long after, Ethan called John again. John then told Ethan to mention the address of the cafe and the account number he found in his wallet. John didn't know what happened at the cafe because he couldn't remember anything. Ethan then convinced John that he was undercover police who disguised himself as a drug dealer to arrest Eddie and General Montejo, but John still couldn't believe it. He hung up the call. Ethan then forces his men to track down John's whereabouts. Shortly after, Anna returned and immediately treated John's wound. After that, they decided to get out of that room. Unfortunately, some of Eddie's men saw them. John and Anna managed to escape from them through the ventilation. In the middle, John's phone suddenly rang and Eddie heard the voice. Eddie ordered him to turn himself. John didn't answer. Eddie then fired his gun to the ventilation.
I'm alive! I need my fucking case!
Lucky for them, John and Anna managed to escape, but in the middle of their escape, John accidentally fell into the church and was greeted by a gun pointed at him by Diego, one of Eddie's men. Diego said that John had betrayed his group. He was supposed to send a total of $23 million that had been transferred by General Montejo, but John instead ran away with the money and the suitcase. John finally remembered what happened. The money was transferred to John's account. John then forced Diego to call Eddie because he wanted to meet him directly. Annoyed by Diego's attitude, John kicked him out of the building and called Eddie. John asked Eddie to meet him on the rooftop all by himself. Eddie agreed, but he secretly assigned some snipers to cover him. Eddie would use the hand signal to indicate the situation. Ethan had managed to track down John's whereabouts in the drug factory under the guise of the hospital. The police gave Ethan 6 hours to save John. If he failed to finish the mission within the given time, the building will be completely blown up. Finally, John met Eddie. It turned out that John had remembered that he was an undercover police agent and Eddie confirmed it. Eddie said that he was also a policeman who became John's partner in the mission to bring down General Montejo. John still couldn't clearly remember it. He wondered whether Eddie was telling the truth or not. John himself still wondering whether he was on the right side or not. Eddie then asked if John remembered where he kept the suitcase. John began to remember that the suitcase was hidden in a hallway. Eddie was too excited to know the truth and accidentally did the hand signal and triggered the sniper to fire their gun at them.
Give me more. Okay, stop it!
Lucky for them, John and Eddie managed to save their life. Eddie finally confessed the truth. He was not an undercover cop. He was a drug cartel mafia who was ordered to kill John. Unfortunately, he couldn't do it because he already considered John his brother. Hearing that, John immediately jumped from the top of the building and managed to get away safely. Not long after, Ethan called John again. John said that his memory had not fully recovered, but John remembered that he had betrayed the mission by taking away the cartel's money all to himself. He said that he deeply regretted his actions for betraying the police and then ordered Ethan to prepare as many armed forces as possible to storm the building. Ethan proceeded to prepare as many forces as he could for the mission. Eddie, on the other hand, used the nurses and doctors as his hostages. And suddenly appeared. Apparently, she managed to get away all by herself and met John. It turned out that Anna was an officer from the CIA. Anna asked John to give her the suitcase, but John just couldn't believe her that easily. In another place, Eddie was about to kill a nurse when suddenly, John called him to meet him all by himself if he wanted to know where John hid the suitcase. When they finally met, shootouts were unavoidable. John managed to lure Eddie to a room where the fight between them broke. When Eddie was about to kill John, Anna suddenly appeared to save him and killed Eddie on the spot. From there, John finally remembered that the girl figure in his mind all this time was Anna. Both of them were lovers, and it turned out that Anna had managed to get the suitcase that had been hidden by John in Garza's office. At the same time, Ethan and his troops appeared. Anna and John were successfully evacuated, but when they wanted to take the suitcase from John, he refused to hand over the suitcase before he knew what was inside of it. Ethan said that there were some dark secrets of the elites of the country, including the president. Ethan was given the mission to snatch the suitcase and had used John all this time to get the suitcase. Anna opened fire inside the car and killed all the federal agents inside, including Ethan. Both of them then left the scene along with the $23 million and the suitcase.